Hi and welcome to the OCR Review, a podcast that covers all things OCR from all around the world.
The first truly international OCR podcast. We are from the UK, living in Asia and following the US racing scene to bring you a holistic overview of what's going on in OCR globally. Hi guys, and welcome to this week's episode of the OCR Review. I'm really excited to be joined by Monika Holmwood, who is a Spartan Pro Team athlete based out in Australia. So today we're going to have a bit of a getting to know you chat, because I've been quite looking forward to getting to know Monika a bit better in general, since I met her last year. So I actually met Monika at the APAC Championship race that happened in China. It was in this beautiful kind of mountainous resort area in Taiwu, and I just remember the mountain goat that she is at the start line, just seeing her kind of trot off up the hill at just an incredible speed, and thinking like, wow, she is fast. I need to get to know who she is better. So super excited to have her on the podcast today. So welcome, Monika. And I'm going to ask you about your experiences in China. So what got you there in the first place and how did you find the race?
Right, well, I was there for the Asia Pacific Championships, which was in Taiwu, which is a ski resort. And we were there in summer, so it was quite mountainous, and it was actually a fair way from Beijing. So yeah. I travelled with my friends from Australia, and just getting there was quite epic on the bus. The last 1 hour was trail, basically on a bumpy road, and a lot of.
And it was long as well, like hours and hours, right?
Yeah, I think it was 4 or 5 hours from Beijing.
Yeah,
and then it was an interesting ski resort, which is hosting the Winter Olympics, the upcoming Winter Olympics. So there was a lot of construction happening, and the race was on a really great mountain. So that really suits me, and it's quite similar to the mountains that we have in Australia, except for in China, they don't have any trees on their mountains. So it was quite exposed to the sun. So I got quite sunburnt during the race, but I was glad that we went all the way to Taiwu, because it was just such a good course with all of with the mountains, and a really big swim in the dam. And then right when you thought you were going into the festival area, you went up another mountain essentially.
Oh God, that was like hell. That final hill, I remember like dropping to my hands and knees at one point and being like, no, it will never end.
Yeah, but it was quite steep. I recall crawling and then trying to descend when you were cramping. And because my luggage was lost, so I didn't have any of my luggage, I was wearing road running shoes. And so just like trying to descend, I had really bad blisters from sliding in my shoes, going over stuff I ran into up to then. But yeah, it was quite fun. And looking back, this year there's probably going to be no Asia Pacific Championships. So, those opportunities will take in the future. And yeah, last year as well, I also went to the World Championships in Lake Tahoe. And so,
yes, which the village bore a remarkable resemblance to the village at Taiwu, right? It was the same architect. So literally, like you walked into the village at Lake Tahoe, and the actual layout and stuff, like nearly exactly the same. It's just you kind of replaced all of like the noodle shops with like pizza places. Bizarre.
Yes, so the World Championships last year, everyone will probably recall that there was a snowstorm, and so it was freezing cold and the conditions were quite terrible, and a lot of women, including myself, did not finish the race because of the conditions. And you made it to the finish line.
Oh yeah.
Tell me how someone from Singapore, where it's really hot, to survive a snowstorm on a mountain after sea level.
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I definitely didn't have my mountain legs ready when we were in Taiwu. I'd slipped on the final obstacle of the end of the SEA Series Championships before the China race, and I'd done a little tear in my glute. So I'd really struggled in that race. And by the time we got round to Tahoe, I was starting to, I could actually train again rather than taking a lot of painkillers before starting the race. But no, I spent a lot of time getting uncomfortable before that race. So we bought like a full-size chest freezer that we stuck in the back of our kind of kitchen pantry area, and after every run, several times a week, I would go and get in the freezer, which we filled up with water, giant blocks of ice and rubber ducks, and I would sit there for as long as I could tolerate until I felt like I was nearly hypothermic, and then I would get out and I would run on the spot, and then I would get back in again. So yeah, I did a lot of kind of Wim Hof style training to actually mentally prepare for how to just take in the cold. I have a friend who's a Wim Hof instructor who's gone over and like trained with him and stuff. So it's also what I'd done the year prior. So I think I kind of mentally knew what cold I could tolerate, and then just decided that nothing could be as bad as sitting in my freezer. But yeah, it took me a really long time to finish the race though, and it was quite a disappointing race for me because I'd been to Tahoe the year prior and run in my age group, and so I'd kind of gone back last year with some really big goals about what I wanted to achieve. You know, I'd raced it the year prior, but I was so terrified about not finishing because everyone said, you know, everyone who comes out from Southeast Asia, it's too hot. They all fail. Everyone gets pulled out at the swim. Like statistically, there'd been 1 or 2 people who had gone through who had actually finished the race. So I'd been so preoccupied with that the year prior that I didn't really race the race. I just kind of went and took everything quite conservatively with kind of the fear of not going through. So I think then going back last year, I was like, I will be damned if cold weather will ruin this. But I didn't really achieve what I wanted to of that race, but I was still really proud to have gone to the finish line in my, I think, 10 layers of clothes. And
yeah, everyone was saying that just finishing that race is an amazing achievement. But I mean, I did not finish, so I felt, you know, terrible at that race and really wanted to do that. And so when they changed the venue to a non-mountainous location, it's very different to Tahoe this year. It was quite disappointing because, like, I found that disappointing because the race has always been a mountain, the world champion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, if I recall correctly, you podiumed in China at the APAC Championships on the mountainous course, right?
Yeah, I came second by 7 seconds.
Oh God, that is the worst.
So at the last obstacle, the girl from China who came first fell off. It was a twister monkey.
I remember, yes.
Yeah, so she started her burpees as I arrived, and I'd already gained a lot of time. Like I was a fair way behind her because I also went into that race injured. So, and I was wearing road shoes, so that's it just takes off a lot of seconds as the race goes on. And so I was a fair way behind her, so I wasn't particularly chasing, but I did speed up towards the end of the race. I got so close, so it just shows you I'm speeding up a bit sooner. But I think, I'm a mountain runner and my distance is like 18 to 30 kilometers. So you can catch people at the end of the race. But it was, second was a good result, even though it was only by 7 seconds.
No, but I mean, that is absolutely amazing. And I think, you know, that really kind of proves your pedigree as a mountain racer. So I'm interested actually to hear how you feel about Abu Dhabi, I guess, as a non-mountainous course, but also one where it will be a different sort of obstacle. You know, I always say that weather is the only obstacle that's not listed on the map. So I guess we're going from one extreme at Tahoe to the other with Abu Dhabi. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, so traditionally I'm not really good in hot weather. So I've had heat stroke once in one race before, and that was in the Asia Pacific Championships in 2017 when it was in Australia.
Oh, okay.
2017 it was my second beast race, and I had heat stroke, so I didn't finish course. So ever since then, I've had an aversion to heat, and it's psychological. But what I do now is, like, when summer comes along, I purposely run in the middle of the day. Yeah. And I haven't had a problem with heat since. But if the World Championships are on in Abu Dhabi, it won't be a flat course because it's at the Morib sand dunes. Yeah. And I think it's a World Heritage Site. Is it?
I think so. It looks beautiful.
Anyway,
Either way, it looks like an amazing site.
It's a significant site,
yeah,
and it has sand dunes. And although it's at sea level, the sand dunes I think go to 300 or 400 meters above sea level. So each climb up the dune is probably 200 to 300 meters of climbing, and so that's on sand. So that's essentially, you could turn it into a mountain race, but I think that it would be a combination of flatter, fast running in the valley with the sand, and so it could suit a mountain runner. You just don't know. But I think if it is on this, because the World Championships are still on at the moment, haven't been cancelled.
Yeah.
The scheduled time slot for the elite female race is 3 or 3:30 p.m. on a Friday, and that is the hottest time of the day, and it's not necessarily the most humid, but it's definitely the hottest. So you're looking at 30 degrees and at least 60% humidity, which
I'm so excited about. That's like basically what I run in every day here, so I'm like, yes, sign me up.
It's probably going to be less humid in Singapore, so you can just rock up. But for me, so where I live is mountains, so I'd have to go and sand, and I'd have to do heat acclimatization. And another thing to note as well is that it's not just hot and humid, it's exposed. Like the desert is really sandy, there's basically no trees. So you also have to practice being exposed to the sun, which at 3 o'clock is like a massive thing. So I would, if I'm going, I'd be training on sand dunes, but also practicing wearing things like a Legionnaire hat that you can soak in water to keep your head cold. Like, so things that people who do desert marathons.
Yes. Yeah. Have you done a desert marathon, or just know of the gear they use?
The mountains are my scene. I don't spend a lot of time at the beach or on sand dunes. So
fair enough. But I imagine training on mountains, that the power in your legs you're going to have is going to translate across to sand anyway, to a fairly large extent. So.
I mean, you can only hope. But yeah, it looks like the World Championships are on leading up to it. In October we'll probably have a better idea. I'd start training on actual sand as well, because it definitely has it sucks a lot more energy than running up mountains.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm like praying for the beaches to open for that.
Yeah, so I always wondering, one thing that I was wondering about last year when I met you was like, how do people in Singapore train for mountain runs? Like, because from what I know about Singapore, I've only been there once.
Yeah.
Like, I don't recall seeing any mountains.
No.
And so how living in such a big city with no mountains, you like prepare for these races.
It's hard. Singapore is really, really flat and really, really humid. So we have one hill that's called Bukit Timah Hill, and it's 160 something meters tall. I'll have to check that. It's not very big. People have done some incredible things there. So there was a guy a few months ago here who did like an Everesting challenge and literally ran up and down it all day until he'd reached same elevation as if you're doing Everest, which is nuts. Which is really, really cool. And so people spend a lot of time there, a lot of time just kind of running like the one main trail, which to be fair is beautiful. I think it's like being named as like one of the top trails in the kind of region by a few different runners magazines, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, to be honest, I find that I have to do a lot more adaptation in my strength training, so a lot more kind of single leg work and step ups and, weighted lunges and drive through and that sort of thing, because, you do struggle to get the leg power. So it's a lot more cross training, a lot more time on the bike. Which is not ideal, but I guess you have to make the most with what you've got, same as being at sea level. When the first year I went to Tahoe, I was really fortunate to bump into Amelia Boone in the middle of the race village, and I asked her if she had any top tips for an athlete traveling from Singapore, and she said that humidity was a poor man's altitude. So I just had to embrace that and hope that it would feel the same.
Yeah, it has the same effect in increasing the number of red blood cells in your body, similar to being at altitude. And so before I went to Tahoe, so Canberra is 800 meters above sea level, and our nearby mountains are 1700 meters. So on the weekend, I'll trade at altitude.
Yes.
So I'm quite lucky in that respect. But Tahoe was a bit higher, which is fine. And I found it, the difference in altitude didn't make much of a difference. But I noticed when I went to Mammoth Lakes that when you started getting to like 2,700 meters above sea level to 3,000 meters, that is the next big thing for me. So if I had to race at that, you would have more acclimatization. But so I was lucky in that respect. But not all races are flat. So, you know, my experience racing, like looking at the races in Asia, most of them seem to be more flat than mountain races.
Yeah, I think we have a lot more jungle runs. So, you know, you'll get like a little bit more just off like bashing through some weird and wonderful terrain. You get so much mud. Oh my gosh. The Sarawak race in Borneo last year, which I was really looking forward to happening again this season, but has obviously, you know, cancelled due to COVID. I just remember like less than a kilometre off the start line, chomping through the jungle and suddenly finding myself up to my hips in mud, like literally just straight down into a pit and being like, oh my God, what is this? You know, the sort of mud that you don't even see it coming, like you're just kind of sloshing through and then just straight down, and it just keeps on going. So yeah, we get a little bit more of that, which is cool. And to be honest, I do quite like the races flat and fast as well. So but yeah, I guess you become a product of your environment, right? So but one of the things I did want to ask you about is obviously I know you spend a lot of time tromping up and down through mountains, which can be quite strenuous on your legs. And like you mentioned, when I first met you in China, you were coming off the back of some injuries. And I know that you do a lot of really cool work in terms of your injury rehab, and have kind of used some of this time to actually, you know, take the time to, I guess, get back on top of some of those niggles. But I'd be interested to hear how you find training and racing through injuries, just given that you had quite a lot of the season last year where you were having to make a lot of adaptations.
Yeah, so racing through injuries is never ideal, and the best case scenario is you can take time off to rehabilitate, but you've made big goals. Like, I'd invested a lot of money into going to the World Championships, and that's not money I was going to get back through prize money. And so I just invested all my annual leave into going. You will still race even when you're injured, and same with the Asia Pacific Championships. So just before the Asia Pacific Champs, I had really bad patellofemoral pain in my knee, and so for 4 weeks I couldn't run, and then I had to do a back to running program. And then towards the end of the year, I had Achilles tendonitis and also plantar fascia pain, which is what I'm properly rehabbing now. And so there is no secret to racing with the injury. The real secret is trying to have time off so you can rehab quick. But one thing is, you know, you can use more immediate treatments like dry needling to release the muscles and reduce the pain such that you can race. And you can use a lot of cross training. So at the moment, I'm doing stationary bike and mountain biking as my cross training, but so I couldn't do that with my knee injury because it puts more pressure on your knee. But so I'm doing a lot of mountain biking on trail, and the mountain bike weighs 14 kilograms, so it actually is strength training at the same time, and you get to be on trails, so it's quite a good one. And stationary bike works slightly different muscles as well, but the crossover from stationary bike to running is quite good. So with my knee, I was doing a lot of swimming, and swimming is not as relevant to running. So when you get back to running, it's a lot tougher. But one thing I've learned recently is that there's a big difference between like an amateur runner and elite runners. So amateur runners, which is like what I was a few years ago, invest less time in running. And so when you are doing the running, you can do it at a fun intensity, which is like relatively intense, but not too intense. So you're having fun. But the volume of running that I'm doing now is you can't do everything at a fun intensity, and you can't do everything on hills because your teams can't cope.
Yeah.
So that's my number one priority at the moment, is making sure that I'm doing my easy running at an easy pace for my body, so that I can get in the volume that I need without getting injured. And so instead of running on mountains every day, it'd just be a couple times a week, which is what people have been telling me for years. But sometimes it takes like being constantly injured for 12 months to realize these things. And you know, if you're in like an easy run, actually do the run easy. And it doesn't have to be like, easy doesn't mean no effort. It does. It means a few things. Like for me, it's more the strain on my tendons. So making sure that runs are easy on my tendons, which is where I've been getting the injuries. And then that opens up more space to do more strength training for the tendons. So at the moment I'm doing like low load running, so that I can do my heavy weighted calf raises every single day. To make sure that I can be a consistent runner in the future. So it's fine. Like for my current injuries, I haven't had to stop running. So we started at 50% and now we're at 64%, still doing a lot of cycling cross training. But this is it's a good opportunity to like fix any problems that you have that you might not have had time during racing. So looking forward to not being injured.
Absolutely. And I guess my other question that I have around that is that, as you said, I think when you move from running, from being kind of an amateur runner to really trying to invest a lot of time in the sport, you do end up having to increase your volume quite significantly, which someone like you or me who has a full-time job can also be a challenge. So I was wondering what other tactics you employ in order to try and just kind of stay, I guess, healthy all round when you are balancing the stress of kind of a higher volume of training and the stress of work, and how do you manage that?
Yes, so one thing I find is that if I'm stressed at work, it stresses out your body. It's almost like it contributes to your training load. So,
100%.
Yeah, that's not been the best for me this year, because the type of law that I do, my team has been really busy this year because of the smoke and the fires caused a lot of work health and safety issues. And then we had a machinery of government change. And now, again, we're really busy because of COVID-19. So all of that stress is like way more work than we normally do. And normally January, where we're really busy, would be a quiet time. So I've had to come up with other strategies, or just like take that into, like, acknowledge that that's part of the load. Because if you don't acknowledge that that's part of the load, you will end up injured. Probably, and it's possible that the stress contributed to me getting injured this year. But one concept that I think...
Been there, done that.
One concept that I think is really interesting is like thinking about your total inflammatory load. So lots of things that like cause inflammation, like training, stress. But there are things that you can do to reduce inflammation, like even things like improving your mental health, doing yoga and meditation, if that's your thing, can really help. So I'm skeptical about these things. Like doing a lot more yoga recently has helped with like the inflammation aspect, I think. But you also work full time, so like what strategies do you normally use to try and balance full time work?
I mean, I think I've definitely have kind of been in the same position as you, where over the last couple of years, as I've increased training load and increased stress at work, I've definitely had a knock-on effect with injuries and niggles. So I think learning to listen to my body and be more on top of that has been a really important part of my OCR journey, we will say. I do a lot of yoga now. I have an awesome physio who I now know to check in with when I'm like, this thing's kind of hurt on my last couple of runs, but only a little bit, rather than waiting until I'm like, I can't put any weight on my leg.
I can't walk.
Which I'm not going to lie, was usually the point that I get to and just be like, oh, that's nothing, that's not much. And then, would get out of bed one day and be like, oh, I can't walk, I can't put pain on that. I probably pushed it too far. So I think actually just learning to check in with myself, and actually keep a training log as well, where I tend to note in it also how I've been feeling at work and stresses that are related to that, how I ended up, on lots of late night calls, so I've had poor sleep, and how's that affected my training. So I think being aware more all round about how my training and my work life is fitting together. But then also for me, food is a massive part of my coping strategy. So also looking, I guess, at health from a more well-rounded perspective. So not just am I training in all of the ways that are specific to OCR, but am I doing a good amount of stretching and mobility? Am I taking a moment every day to check in with myself and be like, how do I feel? Is everything okay? And am I eating the food that is going to reduce inflammation and fuel me well and make me feel good physically and mentally? Is a massive part of what I do, which I'm interested to hear your perspective on, because I believe you work with someone on your nutrition. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in the past and whenever I need help now, that I'm more set up, I've used Harriet Walker, who's from Athletic Eating. And I initially reached out to Harriet because I had that heat stroke experience at
okay.
in 2017, because there were a lot of mistakes that I made during the race and beforehand that I didn't realize I was making. And one of them was completely underfueling with carbohydrates for a long period before. So during that whole year, because I came from a CrossFit background, I was more into like the protein and healthy fats way of eating. And I thought I was eating carbohydrates, but I wasn't eating enough. So she turned that around to make sure that my macronutrients were correct, or at least a bit more in the correct direction. And also taught me about fueling during a hot race where you actually need more fuel and water, which were several other things that I did wrong during that race. And so since 2017, I basically had the same approach for fueling, and occasionally I also get help from Harriet. And I think one of the things is to reach out to a health professional, particularly registered dietitians, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it can be really difficult to know what's going to work and what's appropriate for your sport. And at a high level, when so OCR is essentially running. It's like a genre of running, and OCR we do in Spartan, where you're running at least 5 kilometers. So your fueling is going to require carbohydrates. So I think that's like a lot of athletes going from amateur to elite might like struggle with that initially, because it's not what mainstream media tell you to do. So I think that's like something to think about, rather than just getting all your information from Instagram. It's just the risk to your health is quite large from making the wrong assumptions.
Absolutely. And I think the point you make about finding the right macronutrient balance for your sport and also for you is really important. I think sometimes, especially here, we actually see from a diet perspective, people being very far in the opposite direction. So over-fueling with carbs and not enough of everything else. A lot of the cultures here have quite a heavy kind of rice-based culture with their meals, especially white rice. So you end up, with a large portion of carbohydrates, lots of sugars, but then maybe you're not getting in some of the other nutrients that you need for muscle repair. So I totally agree. I think working with someone who can help you find what's right for you, for your body and for your sport and your fueling needs is so important. I think what's interesting for me about that as well is that that's also kind of how I ended up with my current approach to eating too. So it's a very long story and I'm not going to go into it, but when I was at university, I got a couple of bugs and parasites from traveling, and it took a really long time for the doctors to diagnose what was wrong with me. So I'd gone through all sorts of different tests, I'd been on every painkiller under the sun, and finally when we figured it out, it was actually because I'd gone to see a nutritionist to work out if I had any allergies or if there was something wrong there. And in order to in order to kind of get over the parasites, part of what I had to do was to starve them out of my system. So whilst all of my friends were out getting drunk and partying and eating lots of pasta and lots of baked beans, which is definitely what I was doing before then, I basically had to starve my system of anything that was inflammatory or difficult to digest. So no alcohol, no caffeine. I was on, you know, kind of good wholesome carbs, but just a very clean way of eating, you know, kind of meat, fish with no sauce, vegetables, potatoes. I was on no dairy, no gluten. So again, things which, you know, are slightly more difficult for your body to process, and had to learn from scratch after I'd kind of starved these bugs out of my system, how to completely rebuild my diet in a way that would work for me and what I was doing. And I was doing a lot of dancing and a lot of cheerleading back then. So different fueling and nutrition needs, but still something that was kind of a mix of endurance and explosiveness, I guess, in competition. So yeah, I think having that professional help to actually work out what was right for me was what turned the corner health-wise and allowed me to kind of go on and perform athletically. And without that, I would probably still be taking like 8 painkillers a day going, I don't really know what's wrong. So yeah, I mean, I think we're both on the same page there, that can be such a cornerstone of your lifestyle, and especially if you are kind of, you know, like most people in the OCR community who are balancing their work and their passion for racing and everything else. And I think that's actually one of my favorite things about Spartan, is it does kind of become a lifestyle, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's such a relief as well when you find the right approach. You just feel a lot better. And I really noticed when I for some reason, like I am not doing the approach that's ideal for me, I get really tired or I'm not recovering properly, and it's really noticeable. Like, but if you haven't experienced like optimum fueling for your situation, you think that you're going fine. It's like with my iron deficiency, I was like, I'm fine, I'm not iron deficient, and like severely iron deficient. And then once you have adequate iron, you realize that what you're missing out on. So it can make a big difference. You might not realize it until you get there, but it's such a relief once you get to that point that something's working for you. And like, you sound like you were in quite a horrible situation. So that must have been, you know, great once you found like reasons and a way to go forward.
Yeah, it was definitely, I was digging myself into a hole for a very long time. I think it was a good kind of 6 months of going through tests before they actually worked out what was wrong with me. And then it was a good kind of 6-12 months before I was back to kind of, I guess, a level playing field. But yeah, I agree. Once you've kind of figured it and you can feel in your body what's better, like it's transformational, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, I think we'll maybe leave it on that note about how you can transform your lifestyle, seeing as that's quite a happy note to end off on. But before I let you go, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here. One of the things that we like to do at the end of our episodes is to ask people what their favorite workout of the week has been. So I'm going to give you some time to think, and I'm going to share mine. Mine is actually forward looking. So I do all of my training by heart rate, and I'm very lucky that I work with an awesome coach here who has a lab that usually I can go in and get tested. So I go down to Coached Fitness, and they do all of like my lactate threshold tests, and so I have like really good specific heart rate zones. But with all of the lockdowns at the moment, the lab is closed, so I'm going out to do a good old-fashioned field test this weekend, where I'm going to run all out for 30 minutes and then compare my heart rate data and my pace, and to see how that's tracking against what my current heart rate zones are, and try and figure it out from there. So it's not happened yet, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not that excited about going balls to the wall for 30 minutes, but I'm putting it out there that that's what I'm doing, and that will be my workout of the week.
Yeah, that's great. And I've done that 30-minute test before, and normally because a lot of people go out harder in the first 10 minutes, you like lap your watch at that point, and then you use a heart rate in the last 20 minutes.
20 minutes,
Cool. On the same page.
Oh
yeah. You'll have fun. It'll be good.
Yeah.
So this week I did a workout on hills where I did 3 10-minute threshold runs with 3 minutes of jogging in between. And that was fun because at the moment I'm not doing that much running. So I don't, and because of my tendon, I don't get much fast running. So it was really fun just to run fast. And tomorrow for one of my training sessions, I'm doing efforts on my mountain bike, which I've never done before. So interesting. Yeah. So it's like mountain biking is difficult. It's not like running where you can do an effort down a hill. So you're running on rolling hills and you've got a 10-minute effort, you can still run hard down the hill, right, and keep your heart rate high. But on a mountain bike, it's really hard to do that downhill. So I've had to like find a hill that I can do this on. So I'm doing 3 7-minute efforts in the middle of a 90-minute bike ride. So that's just something. I mean, the concept is the same as running.
Of course,
so, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, I've chosen a fire trail, so my technical skills won't hold me back. But it's just sometimes the cross-training workouts are like a lot harder to implement than just running. Running is like, you know what you're doing. You go and do it.
Yeah, that's true. And you know the drill for that. Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a bit of cross training on my bike at the moment as well. And this week I was like, I'm going to go out for a nice, easy 30-minute cycle. So I went on Strava and I plotted out the route. And I got 10 minutes in, and the only elevation that was in this whole route was on this one hill that I was suddenly huffing and puffing my way up like, I've clearly found one more hill in Singapore that I didn't know existed. I think it was like a 50-meter like stretch or something, but you know, it was enough that my nice, easy cycle suddenly became me like standing and mashing the pedals going, I wasn't expecting this. The rest of it, super nice and easy. You know, it's kind of like a gentle slope back to my house. And I walked in the door, looked at my watch and went, oh, that was a good 20 minutes. I definitely didn't plan that right. So I'm still learning how to track.
Yeah, it's you get used to like your sport. Like running is really easy to estimate for me. And I can estimate how long it will take me to return, even if it's like uphill on the way there, downhill on the way back. But on the bike, I'm still like, I can be half an hour off. Like on the weekend when I did my mountain bike ride, I was half an hour over time.
Oh no.
But it's probably my ability descending that really held me back. But I mean, it's fine. It's just, you know, adds a bit of fun and uncertainty.
But I guess if there was ever a time that we were going to have fun and uncertainty in our workouts, now is the time, right?
That's right.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to wrap there.
And that concludes this episode of the OCR Review. We hope you enjoyed it and we'd love to hear from you, so please hit us up on our social media channels. You can email us at theocrreview@gmail.com, find us on Instagram at theocrreview, or on Facebook at the OCR Review.
Remember to send us your thoughts, questions and suggestions for future episodes, and please do subscribe on Spotify, Apple or your podcast platform of choice and leave us a review. We've been
Ilona,
Jay,
Sean
and Jessie.
and this is the OCR Review. Thanks for listening.